Hello, everyone. This is Pastor Tommy McMurtry from Liberty Baptist Church in Rock Falls. Wanted to come to you live. Just wanted to talk about a couple things this morning. So, you might have seen this evening, I'm going to be releasing the presentation we did at the Marching to Zion conference about the true Temple Mount location. You are not going to want to miss this. Make sure you spread this video everywhere. Everybody knows the truth about the Temple Mount except the Baptists, it seems, that location where the Dome of the Rock is, where the Wailing Wall is, where Baptists every year go and literally pray to a wall, that is not the true Temple Mount location, and it is easy to prove that, and we're going to do it in this presentation. You're going to see it is from last year's Marching to Zion conference, so make sure you watch the video, spread the word on that video. But a lot of people have been kind of getting mad at me because lately I've been, hitting Zionism pretty hard. I've been publicly calling out some people and rebuking some things. And I just want to say that when it comes to this reckless, just foolish theology, these things need to be publicly rebuked. And I want to just encourage people to understand that if you are a friend of someone, you will call out foolishness. And I am a friend to the independent fundamental Baptists. And so I'm going to tell them the truth. When they get out of line, if my friends get out of line and are teaching reckless, irresponsible, foolish theology, I'm going to say something. And if they don't get it right, I'm going to publicly rebuke this kind of foolishness. And the foolishness is off the charts. Not everybody was happy with my message that I did on a rebuke of Baptist missions to Israel. That needed to be called out. I do not understand why fundamental Baptists are not calling that foolishness out. I don't know why anyone would consider, physically supporting Israeli military and helping them kill Muslims. I don't understand how anyone would call that missions, yet that is missions today. And I didn't talk about this in that message because I didn't know it was still around, and I didn't want to talk about someone who had died not long before that. But a lot of this foolishness with the Baptist missions to Israel, supporting their military, giving them physical support instead of preaching them the gospel, a lot of that foolishness was started by Pastor Jim Vineyard from Oklahoma. Now, I didn't know him personally and never met him personally, but I will say I've met a lot of people out of that college from over the years, and I believe that college produced some really good fruit. They put out some really good people. I've not known a lot of people from that college, but all of them that I have known, I've greatly respected. So I, always thought very good of Jim Vineyard, but I do know later in his life, he kind of went off the rails on the subject of Israel. And the funny thing is, even some of his biggest fans would say that privately, how the guy was kind of taking this a little too far. He had his Yedidim of Israel conferences, and some people I knew went to it that loved Israel and that loved Jim Vineyard, and they said, this is weird. He's taken this too far. But nobody publicly called the man out. They still kept supporting him. They kept encouraging him. I think a lot of people, they were doing it out of respect. They knew he was old. He probably wasn't going to be around much longer. But at the same time, we see that he passed on some of that foolishness to people, and it is still out there. I thought that Yedidim of Israel ministry was gone, but it's still around. And somebody showed me this post, Paul Vineyard, who has his son who has taken over that ministry. Let me just show you this post that he did on Facebook that is just off the charts, ridiculous, yet none of his friends are calling him out on this. I had to do it. He said on here, do you find it amazing that President Trump's mansion in Mar-a-Lago, Florida is 80 miles straight west of where Hurricane Dorian ripped through the Bahamas, and yet his home was untouched by the storm? I can't help but think that God showed mercy to the man who has been, over the past 3 years, the greatest ally to the nation of Israel that the world has ever seen. And I can't help but notice that the Lord God Almighty put the brakes on the storm, heading on a straight line, or heading on the line straight west, and sharply turned it north away from the president's home. President Trump is not a perfect man, but he is God's man at this time. He is untouchable. Such a time as this, Genesis 12:3 is still true. So right there, folks, that just blows my mind. According to Paul Vineyard, because of Trump's support for Israel, God wiped out all the poor people in the Bahamas and spared Trump one of his mansions that he wasn't even present at. Now, go figure. What kind of crazy idea is that? First off, we don't know why God does all these things, but I can promise you, God did not spare one of President Trump's mansions, all right, and wipe out the Bahamas because of his support for Israel and because of Genesis 12:3. And I tried to get him to, expound on Galatians 3. He wouldn't do it. The foolishness is ridiculous, and I can't believe the man has no friends that will call him out and publicly rebuke him on that. I have to do that kind of thing. And I just think that's too bad, and it's getting ridiculous. I've debated on sharing this on my channel. I was the one that found it and originally gave it to someone else, and some of you may have seen it, but Pastor Rick Bevins, someone who's gotten caught up in this, preached in a church that Christians, if they want to get their prayers answered, they need to pay the full price and the full fare, and they need to go to Jerusalem and go to the Wailing Wall and pray there to get their prayers answered. Now, the sad thing about it, the pastor of that church where he preached that, he got up in the next service and he corrected it, but he still left the sermon on his website. He's not publicly rebuking this man. That kind of teaching is garbage. That is reckless, irresponsible, just foolish theology, and nobody seems to want to call it out. We've got, right here is a picture of the Wailing Wall where he wants you to go pray with people's prayers stuffed in there. And you're going to see in this presentation tonight, that wall was never a part of the temple in any way. That is not the location. It's easy to prove. But even if that was the Wailing Wall, even if that was a wall that was a part of the temple, praying there is not going to do you. It's not going to do any more than if you prayed right here in the United States. And this picture that I just happened to get was one that Sam Gipp took. It was on his Twitter showing the prayers. And Baptists, Christians of all faiths, they go there, they pray at that stupid wall. There's Benny Hinn holding hands with the Jew, praying at the wall. Everybody goes and does it, and they think it's this wonderful thing. And the funny thing is, everyone knows that's not the location of Solomon's temple. The Muslims know it. The Catholics know it. The Jews definitely know it. It's the Baptists that don't seem to understand this very simple truth. So make sure you watch that tonight. And folks, if you don't want people like me calling out your friends when they preach trash and just foolish garbage, then you need to do it. It can't just be people like me doing it. You've got to call this stuff out. This kind of thing is being spread, and unfortunately, this foolishness of supporting Israeli military and basically using missions money to help Jews kill Muslims. Unfortunately, that did not die with Jim Vineyard. It is now still being promoted and pushed through the Gentile ministries with Brian Sharp, through missionary Gary Way is doing some of the same things. And I go into detail on some of these men's ministry in my sermon, A Rebuke of Baptist Missions to Israel. And I'm just wondering when Baptists are going to stop being political. And I understand you all think Israel's great. God's got something for Israel in the future. But do you really think we ought to be supporting their military and helping them kill Muslims? Do you really think we ought to be going over there and giving them physical support and not preaching them the gospel? It's illegal to preach the gospel in Israel. You can't pass out tracts in Israel. And I've showed on previous videos the tract that Brian Sharp puts in the Bibles that he gives them. It doesn't even mention the name of Jesus. It doesn't have the gospel in it. And y'all are supporting these people because you're pro-Israel. But I don't see why you would be pro-killing Muslims and helping doing that with missions money. I don't get that. I don't get how you would support somebody and how you would encourage somebody who's teaching Christians they need to pay the full fare and go over to Jerusalem and pray to a wall to get their prayers answered. And I didn't want to put that video on my channel, but I'm going to. It needs to get out there. People need to see this type of foolishness and start calling out for what it is. And so I'm encouraging Baptists out there to get a backbone, get a spine, be a real friend, show some real love. And when your fellow Baptist preachers are preaching foolishness and preaching heresy, you need to call it out. And it's pretty sad, the fact that Sam Gipp had been preaching for years that Jesus was not his Messiah. And nobody cared, nobody paid any attention to it until Marching to Zion came out and got out there on a mass scale. And also people are like, well, I don't agree with that. Well, why didn't you ever call him out? Maybe if his friends would have called him out on that, he wouldn't have been humiliated on that documentary. You know, I wonder if some of Bob Gray's friends would have personally called him out when he was promoting the Born That Way book. Maybe he wouldn't have been humiliated on a large scale with the documentary Burn That Way after all. You know, it's time you all start keeping each other in check and calling things out when they happen. And, you know, open rebuke is better than secret love. And we got way too much secret love going on. And nobody is holding anybody accountable for dangerous heresies. So just understand, if you don't call this stuff out, somebody will. And it'll probably be people like me. And I don't want to hear any complaints when I do it. You all have been putting up with this stuff for years and saying nothing. And it's time somebody say something about it. And I'm going to say something about it. And that's all there is to it. And so anyway, make sure tonight, watch this presentation on the true location of the Temple Mount. Watch my sermon, A Rebuke of Baptist Missions to Israel, and hear the truth on these things. Be inspired, be bold. Even if you don't completely agree with me, have the backbone, have enough love, be a good enough friend that when those that you fellowship with, that you associate yourself with, start getting reckless and foolish in their theology, don't be afraid to go to them and say, hey, buddy, I love you, but you're wrong. You need to get this right. Otherwise, people like me are going to put videos out on YouTube embarrassing you while you're telling everyone to go pray to a wall. So I hope this was a help. God bless you. We'll talk to you later.